Hello, everybody. Very good afternoon. And first of all, at the very outset, I would like to share my humble gratitude to Dr. Padmanabhan for warmly inviting me into the space and to deliver the valedictory address. I'm very sure that the conversations that have taken place so far over the past couple of days have been very prolific, have been extremely detailed, and at the same time must have involved a lot of paradigms and perspectives of conversation around the question of media, digital platforms from diverse disciplinary perspectives. Uh, Today, what I'm going to do in the course of the next 30 minutes is going to engage with a particular research topic which centrally emerges from the aspect of my personal experiences engaging with the question of online archiving. And my topic of presentation is creating independent cultural archives through digital platforms, a case study on Roots, a living archive. So just to clarify, Roots are double OTS and ROUTES. A living archive is basically an online archive that I started back in 2018 with the intention of archiving my various documentary research works centered on different cultures and traditions and lifestyles and on various communities, various interracial communities, transcultural communities, diaspora communities, and various indigenous communities as well within India and other parts of the world. And the purpose of bringing in this particular archive into the conversation today is basically about to speak from my personal experiences and positionalities, and which I usually do at the very beginning of every presentation. I do is to clarify my positionality so that people don't misjudge my arguments and presentations as some sort of generalized or I'm trying to speak on somebody else's behalf. So my way of understanding the question of media and digital platforms is not specifically from the discipline of media. Um, I am associated with the centrally with the discipline of English literature, but my work also branches out and interweaves, in fact, with various other disciplines like sociology, anthropology, cultural studies, race studies. And also, the aspect of media is also there, very much active, especially in terms of my habitual engagement with online archiving. Now, why did I particularly choose to specifically to talk about online archives? Is the first question that I would like to begin with. Now, usually when we engage with this whole paradigm of archiving, the necessity of archiving, and whatever it is, I mean, in terms of archiving movies, in terms of doing creative documentaries, in terms of indulging in social works, field works, or any sort of field documentaries, or on any other particular topic, when we engage with online archiving, usually the discourses that we see around are very institutionally restricted in nature. Now, what do I mean by institutionally restricted in nature? That yes, as on the one side, it is very much encouraged to involve and indulge with archives, to talk about archives, to build archives for like both online and offline archives for the sake of preserving our respective research works, not only for the present generation but also for the next generation of scholars as well. We are also consistently reminded that our archives should follow certain specific patterns of structuring, whether it's a technical structuring, theoretical structuring, or various other ways of structuring. We are consistently reminded that our archives uh, will only gain popularity, or let's say our archives will only reaching out to a large number of people only if we are able to engage with certain specific ideas, specific topics, or specific formats of presentation. Now, at the personal level, I find this is very problematic, and on a lot of occasions, it's also very redundant in nature as well. Why so? Because usually what happens, and we are expected, and that actually opens up to that wider, socio-political question. The question of the politics of archives, the optics of archive, the socio-political, the socio-cultural representation of archives in different spaces. So first of all is usually what happens, the different things that we present through our archives um, are expected to feed into certain specific patterns of or certain specific structures of political ideologies, social ideologies. Then only it is expected to gain popularity, or then only it is expected to be appreciated. Otherwise, what happens? Very politically certain archives are very, excuse me, very politically certain archives are sort of marginalized um, in a very systematic way, because it may present some sort of documentaries or lectures or visual presentations or audiovisual presentations that do not conform with the established political ideologies, social ideologies, or cultural ideologies of dominant institutions. Similarly, we can take into consideration or take into account the various other factors as well. Let's say the cultural perspectives. Certain archives trying to present some sort of, or trying to celebrate some sort of religious propagandas, cultural propagandas, or political propagandas, which may not be actually very sensible, which may not be very positive, which can be problematic in various ways. But that archive gains a lot of popularity because it somehow somewhat appeals to the popular desires of the community or a group of communities. And we can try to understand this example from different dimensions. I mean, obviously, for ethical reasons, I'm not going to take particular names of political parties or social institutions, but if we just look around, what sort of archives gain popularity, what sort of archives are criticized, or what are those archives those are centralized, what are those archives that are marginalized. If we try to look at the patterns of doing that, like the social pattern, the cultural pattern, the historical pattern, I think this argument will be very clear in many ways in those contexts. And another challenge, I mean, apart from this political, social, and ideological challenge, another challenge of building archives, or depending on institutions to build archives or to assist us in building archives online, is the financial factor. I mean, obviously, if we want to build something very professional, we may have the technical expertise, we may have the technical understanding of how to first create an archive, make it look very appealing, what are some of the sensible and sensitive topics we can include in construction of the archive. But we may not have the necessary financial assistance to build the archive, and we know that any sort of these works, whether online or offline, requires major financial contributions, requires major fund assistance. And when we approach, or when we usually approach to different institutions, let's say within our country or outside, the process of generating funds or the process of financial support is not always, or not exclusively, centered on the quality and the intention of the archive. I mean, apart from the intention of the archive, there are various, again, a lot of those social, political, and ideological factors that contribute towards funding a particular archive. And an institution may or may not want to fund an archive because of political, ideological differences, may not want to fund an archive because let's imagine that particular institution do not support a particular religious ideology, or a particular cultural ideology, or a particular community. See, so in those circumstances, what I could closely observe is a lot of those important works, a lot of those important research works, important narratives. It can be anything. I mean, I'm not just talking about the cultural. I'm specifically focusing on the cultural because that is how I personally involved in building archives. But apart from that, we can take any other example. A lot of those narratives in the long run gets lost because we fail to get the necessary financial assistance, we fail to get the necessary technical assistance, or the technical support from institutions and individuals to shape an archive, to shape a particular archive. So these are the two major challenges that have actually shaped my involvement to date in order to build an archive of my own. I mean, obviously, the archive that I'm talking about, Roots and Roots, is an independent archive. It has been totally structured by me. There has been no financial assistance so far to sort of to kind of assure me of a long-term plan to carry forward this archive. But from my own end, whatever I can do, I can actually I try to do to make this archive a continual process. And this archive has been functional since 2018. And as I was sharing that, you know that this started with one of my documentary research projects. And when I started this archive, these are some of the factors that contributed towards the shaping of this particular archive. And obviously, the one of the major factor was, let's say if I do not receive, I tried to approach different institutions with my documentary research works that I want to start an archive, but also I require financial assistance to develop this particular archive in a very professional fashion. But very unfortunately, I hardly got any responses at that point of time. And there were a few responses, they were all in negative. So obviously I felt very disheartened. And but one thing I wanted to make sure that I should start working, I should start building my own archive. I mean, no such challenges to should stop me from building an archive of my own, because I was very confident, and I'm still very confident, that the different research works that I do requires thorough archiving in order to make sure that it is available to the present generation of people, so that I can personally, at the personal end, make sure that it is available to every generation of people, not only in the present times but also in the future as well. So in that sense, self-archiving, or archiving, like self-initiatives to archive different ideas and perspectives, is very important. So I started this as a normal YouTube channel, and this is what, with the passage of time, digital media has enabled us. As we have a lot of negative impact of the digital media on us, we also can't deny the point that they have a lot of positive impact on us as well. And one of the many positive impact is obviously the different ways where we can generate our own archival platforms. It can be through YouTube channels, it can be through Facebook pages, Instagram pages, Twitter pages, and many other such other spaces. We can generate websites and blogs and various other platforms through which we can create our archives. And it may not be as professional as it could have been with different institutional and financial assistances, but for sure something is better than nothing. At least the process should begin. And this process is not just for the sake of, and this whole process of archiving is not just a momentary process. It is a long-term historical process. It's a cultural process. It's a political process. And to counter the challenges, to expose the challenges, to expose the various forms of unique perspectives that our society have around us, in terms of cultural practices, in terms of political practices, and in terms of various other forms of practices. Archiving actually helps us to maintain them and put it out into the public. So I started with one of my research documentary projects on the Anglo-Indian community of Bow Barracks. It's an Anglo-Indian community place in the city of Kolkata. And then after the documentary was very much supported by the Journal of International Women's Studies Fund, uh, based at the Bridgewater State University in the US. But then I thought, now how to make this documentary openly and publicly available, and that is from where I started the archives, which was previously known as Orthat Archives, and now it has been renamed as Roots and Roots, to make it more close to the work that I have been doing for the last 5 years with respect to my archive. And that is when the journey started. And then later on, I thought that one way of expanding my archive is not just to include my own work, but also to invite people, to invite scholars, researchers, I mean, irrespective of their institutional affiliation, if they're working on something unique, on unique cultural practices, if they're working, they can send their their recordings, their documentaries, and if they want to, if they're trying to find a decent archival space, they can send it to me. And I have been doing that. I mean, though, if I mean, once you go to the YouTube, I mean, if you're interested, just visit YouTube and visit the channel. What you will see is obviously a majority of the works are mine, because I did not receive, unfortunately, a lot of work from others. But there are quite a few works, that have been sent to me by others and have been well archived in this particular channel. And so it has been, now in this 5 years, this 5 years journey for me has been obviously quite challenging, because again, it's a very personal archive. Initially, people are skeptical about that, why one should subscribe for such an archive, but I have been consistently and religiously persisting to keep my archive updated with my short videos and documentaries of different sorts of research. You will find research about the Scottish women in Kolkata, research works about the diaspora, African diaspora community in Gujarat called the Siddhis, which is a very recent research work. Um, uh, and then there are research works that basically indulges with a lot of um, diaspora communities that are currently based in South Africa. And now, because I am currently based in South Africa, I am working on a lot of these diaspora communities there. There are short documentaries about their musical practices, cultural practices, food practices. And what I usually do is, like with the passage of time, I have also identified folks who are interested in these works, in looking at these works. And I keep on using the social media platform very actively, like, for example, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, to share my works, on WhatsApp and Telegram with interested people, interested folks, who then, if and when they like the works, they share it amongst their folks. And that actually has helped me to uh, make my archival works available to other archives as well. So, which is a sort of positive feeling for me, that despite the challenges, the financial and the institutional challenges, even at our own end, if we take initiatives, and if we just continue to keep on persisting our initiative despite those challenges, we can actually make our work reach out. For instance, very recently, one of my documentaries, which I did in 2018, 2019, on the Scottish women in Kolkata, the history of the Scottish women in Kolkata, and that has been archived in a very prestigious archival space called the Edinburgh Printmakers. They are running the Living Archive project, and where they have archived my work. And this whole process took place through the public dissemination of my work, through the consistent public dissemination of my work. They contacted me with respect to my work, and they invited me to archive my work. So the purpose of sharing this is to say, I'm sure many of you who are listening to this particular lecture must be wondering, but a lot of how and what might be coming across your mind. Like, how do we just channelize our work at our own end without much of support from individuals and institutions? But the work must go on, which I always feel, and which I always argue, that despite these challenges, somewhere we have to begin. I mean, the journey should begin, and then I'm sure, with the passage of time, with experience, with all the struggles, all the challenges, we will surely figure out possible ways of expanding our works across diverse archival spaces. And the purpose, and that's why I shared these examples, just to encourage you. I'm very much sure in the audience there will be many people, there are many folks, especially because you're all from, or mostly you are from the media studies department, that you must be having your own Facebook pages, or you must be having your own YouTube channels, and you must be sharing a lot of works there. Maybe it's just lectures or documentaries or some other forms of creative works, but you have been doing a lot of works, and many of you may be flourishing well without much of a support, or maybe many of you have been quite privileged to receive support from different corner points. So it is also, if you just engage with each other as well, and if you reflect back in your respective experience of the archival work, you will find out that there are ways to figure out the work across. And today this has actually been a norm. For instance, I will just cite another example apart from my archive, because currently I'm very closely working with this African diaspora community in Gujarat. They are popularly known as the Siddhis. So the Siddhi cultures and traditions are very unique. Their dance practices, their musical practices are very unique. But also they have undergone multiple levels of racial, cultural, political, geographical, and communal, and various other forms of marginalization across different times and space and histories. So to counter that, for them, archives function, their cultural archives function as a very important space to counter these challenges. And that is why you will see, if you go across YouTube and if you're interested in their works, different YouTube channels based on the Siddhi musical practices are being coordinated and are being organized by the Siddhi people themselves. They have opened up multiple YouTube channels, multiple Facebook pages to channelize and generate their works. And today, this has yielded them that they have been doing it for decades now, like at least 20 years, 25 years. And now today, their works have actually are reaching so many diverse corners of the world, just because of this archival work. People across the world today are able to know about the Siddhi cultures, the Siddhi traditions, the lifestyles, their cultural practices, and less with books and journal articles, and more with the archives, more with these online archives. The videos reach out to different people. It reach one people, from one people it travels to another people, and in this way just circulates across the world. And today, based on these archives, they are invited to perform across the world. So this is another very positive example of how self-archiving could be a very, very strong process, a very optimistic process to generate these spaces of interactions. And one final perspective with that I would like to end with, because I know it's a valedictory and we don't have to extend it for a long period of time, and also because of different time challenges, I'm unable to deliver it live. So I would just end with one particular perspective, is to invite us all to collectively think that how and why we should generate self archives across the different digital media platforms, and why this whole process, this whole culture of self archiving is so important. Obviously it requires basic technicalities, which doesn't require a lot of training. Like at our respective ends, we can learn and we can simply implement them. Just, and there are so many video tutorials now, there are so many softwares, that are editing softwares, that are free to download and free to use, and there are tutorials associated with that. We just need to be patient, we just need to be persistent, and most importantly, let us learn. Let us not wait for somebody else to do things for us. Let us not wait for a particular institution or a particular funding body to assist us in the process of doing the work. Let us personally take the initiative and start doing the work, and then let's patiently wait and see like to what extent the work goes on. But continuity and persistence of this archival work is very important, because again, just to say as a reminder that it is not just a momentary work, it is not just doing for the sake of doing. It's not just because I am sitting free, I have no other work, I'm just making videos on the YouTube or opening up a YouTube channel. No, it's about, it's a form of cultural resistance, it's a form of social resistance, it's a form of political resistance at many levels. Resistance against mainstream cultures, resistance against socio-political hierarchies, resistance against gender and sexual hierarchies, communal hierarchies, caste hierarchies, and many other things. And it is also a form of, it is also an act of establishing spaces of dialogues, establishing spaces for countercultural interactions within one's own society and across and beyond as well. So I'll stop here. Thank you so much once again. If you have any question, any reflection, if you want to send any sort of feedback, feel free to write to me. My email ID is SAYAN, all in small letters, SAYAN DEY8989 @ yahoo.com. So it is Sayan Dey 89 @ yahoo.com. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.